I want to give an introduction for relationships. You'll be getting 2 other relationship lectures. This is the introduction to those 2, okay? It's a theological introduction that I'm going to give through the woman at the well. I'm going to talk about 2 things. One is metaphors, and the other is a box concept. And these 2 items are important for where we're going to go next, all right? So you know this story, but let's go through it and analyze it very similarly to what we did yesterday. Are you ready? All right. First, I'm going to show some artist renderings of the woman at the well. So I'm just going to click through several of these. These are from all over the world. This is the looking at the jar with the water. The journey to the well. This is a journey away from the well. Christ is the water of life. This is the woman herself. This is the world that traps her. I thought this was especially good. What's interesting on this one, it almost looks like, I don't know if those are water buckets or just weights, but she seems to be the fulcrum there. The moment of decision. This is an African American depiction, I think. The dialogue. The well. We have the Jesus as speaker, as a black man, and then we have the woman as speaker. And the God who knows us. I believe that's actually supposed to be the palm of a hand. Okay, in the text. He, Jesus, had to go through Samaria. That first sentence is actually not accurate in its most literal sense, because we all know he did not have to go through Samaria. Most Jews went around Samaria, right? But what I find it interesting is that this text said he had to go. So it must be for some reason that he had within himself that he had to go. So he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a Samaritan city called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired out by his journey, was sitting by the well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." The Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, a Jew, can ask of me, a woman of Samaria, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? As Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." The woman said to him, "Well, sir, you have no bucket, and the well is deep. Where do you go to get that living water? Are you greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us the well?" Jesus said to her, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but those who drink of the water that I give them will never be thirsty. The water that I will give will become in them a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water, so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water." Jesus said to her, "Go, call your husband and come back." The woman answered him, "Well, I have no husband." And Jesus said to her, "Well, you're right in saying I have no husband, for you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true." The woman said to him, "Well, sir, I see that you are a prophet, and I know that Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will proclaim all things to us." And Jesus said to her, "I am he, the one who is speaking to you." All right, we're going to save the end of this text until we analyze it. So let's go to the next one. All right, facts versus metaphors. As I told you already yesterday, we don't learn as well with facts as we do with what? Stories, that's right. And that's what a metaphor is. A metaphor is a little miniature story, in a sense, Because with a metaphor, you're connecting two things. That's what a metaphor is. It's always connecting two things. It's showing you the parallel between two things. So a fact tells us, a metaphor talks to us about how to think, about how to look at something. All right. Now, there are several metaphors in this text, and I've highlighted them in yellow. There's the metaphor of the well, the metaphor of water, and the metaphor of drinking. And you might say, well, wait a minute. Those are all literal things there at the well. I'll show you why I'm suggesting that they are metaphors. But before we do that, let's go on for another look at some more metaphors. You see here gift, living water, the well is deep. Okay, now let's go back and look at these. So he had to go through Samaria, and we know this woman, Jesus was sitting by the well, and a Samaritan woman came to draw water. Okay. And Jesus says to her, give me a drink. Now, the thing that is not said in this text, that if he drinks from anything that she touches, then he's considered unclean. So she knows this. So when he turns to her and says, give me a drink, we can imagine that she's not just shocked, she's irritated. And that comes through in what she says here. She says, how is it that you, a Jew, ask a drink of me, a woman of Samaria? It's like you can hear her almost say, come on. You know, not only are you a Jew, but I'm a Samaritan, and I'm a woman, and the thing she doesn't say, of ill repute. Otherwise, she wouldn't be there at that time of day. So she's not just shocked. She's a little irritated, I would guess. You know, how can you do this? She doesn't say why. She said, how can you do this? Okay. Jesus answers her, if you knew the gift of God, who it is saying to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Okay. That's where Jesus introduces a what? What is that right there? Living water. A metaphor. That's right. He introduces a metaphor because she knows that the water in that well is just water. And he says, if you knew who it was and who I am, then, you know, you would ask and I would give you living water. Okay. Now, the woman then talks in metaphor back, which often happens when you talk in metaphor. When I was doing a lot more counseling, I remember talking to a couple, and I use metaphors a lot, so this happens with many couples. I said, what is it like living with this woman? And this man said, it's like I'm a piece of toast. And no, he says, there's a piece of toast, and I'm like the jam that she just spreads all over her toast. And she goes, I do not spread you everywhere. She responded with a metaphor. And he says, you do. You spread me anywhere you want all the time. So I say to the guy, I say, then why don't you put the lid on the jar? Now, I don't even know what that means, right? But they do. They do. How do I know that they know? Because she said, oh no. I said, oh really? Why? She said, then I have no part in the spreading. So when they left, I said to him, you know, I really want to encourage you to think about putting that lid on the jar, at least some of the time. He said, I'm going to. Now, I don't know what they're about to do. They do, but I don't. When they come back, I say to him, well, is the lid on or off the jar? And she goes, on, and I don't like it. I still don't know what's going on, but they do. That's the power of a metaphor. Very, very powerful. So Jesus says, if you would have asked, I would have given you living water. And the woman says to him, sir, you have no bucket. Now that's interesting because she's sitting there with a bucket. How do we know? Because she left it there later. So why didn't she say, oh, you have living water here. Take my bucket. But she just sends her, look, you have no bucket. And the well is deep. Now, he's talking in metaphor. She's talking in metaphor back because she's saying, if you've got living water, how are you going to get it? Because the well is deep. She's not talking about that well. Let's look at the well she's talking about. This is what I call the box concept. This is just a box, and the white area around it is just where the box is sitting. So we have a box. Every time we experience emotion, emotion goes in that box. If the lid is left open, the emotion comes right back out. Maybe you say what you're feeling. Maybe you go for a good run. You decide you don't need to say what you're feeling. But most people aren't able to live with the box open. They tend to leave it closed, so that's what happens. Emotion goes in, and it stays in, and it starts building. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay? So you've experienced that where something sits in there for a while and it begins to build up. All right. And then it builds up more. And what people often think, well, is if I just keep the lid on tightly enough, then this won't show, right? But then they start putting bows around it, so not only will it not show, people will think they feel other than they really do. That maybe they have portrayed feeling very happy when they're not happy. There are so many couples I've worked with where one of the partners says, I was totally shocked when she said she wanted a divorce. Or I was totally shocked when I found out he was having an affair. And I say, really? Were you really? Were there no signs whatsoever? Or with a couple that's getting ready to get married and I say, are you in love? And one of them says, well, no, I don't think so. Well, why are you getting married? Well, I keep thinking it'll come. Really? At what point do you think the love will appear? Or really, you didn't know that your husband was unhappy? You didn't realize that, well, I knew he was unhappy, but I didn't think he would have an affair. Well, these are all comments from people that are tucking things in the box, closing the lid, putting a bow on the top, and acting like that casserole is their favorite. And finally, after 25 years, they say, I can't stand that casserole. What? You've been eating it for 25 years and you're just now telling me that you don't like it? Not only do we put bows around it, we chain it so that sometimes we can no longer even unwrap it if we wanted to. Because we can no longer face what's in that box. And that often happens with abuse and trauma and other things. But just when we think we have it all in control, then one more thing gets added. We see that a lot at the hospital with people who experience illness. When I have asked literally hundreds of people how full their boxes are. Now, mind you, I encounter mostly stressful people that are, in stress and in the hospital. But I have never had anyone tell me that their box was empty. Everyone seems to be carrying around, at least the ones I've talked to, and mind you, they were mostly people in stress, carrying around a certain level of stress, a certain level of stuff that they're not able to show or to be open with. So when that one other thing happens, the sickness of a child, the loss of a job, going back to school, you name it. Sometimes it's just the loss of a pet. I say just, because that can be big. Or sometimes it's just a bad day and you see people that just come unglued. And then the box explodes. And people act crazy. They look crazy. They say crazy things. They drive crazy on the road. You've seen these people. You may have been one of these people. I want to tell you a story. I call it the story of the socks. I was giving a lecture just like I am here with you, and a woman in my class said, I know exactly what you're talking about. Could I tell a story? Well, that always scares me because you never know what story someone's going to tell. But she came up and she started telling the story, and I'm going to just walk over here so I can get into a space where I can move and tell you the story. She said, when I got married, she said, I married the most wonderful man, and she said, I just thought this man can do no wrong. And she said, then one day I looked from my bedroom into the bathroom, and I saw the hamper, and his socks were hanging on the side of the hamper. And I say, honey, why are your socks hanging on the side of the hamper? She said, but I really only said it in my head. I didn't want to say anything to him because I said to myself, I love this man. So what if the socks are hanging on the side of the hamper? Does it really matter? She said, I went over there, put the socks in the hamper. And then she said, we went on a little bit. And then she said, my husband said he would mow the lawn before Sabbath, and I come home and the lawn's not mowed. And he says, you know what, just close the blinds. The company will never know. And I say to myself, you know, I want to say something, but I really love this man, and I'm just going to take it in and just deal with it. And then he tells me he's going to bring his boss home for supper at 6. And I have the supper all out at 6, and then at 6, and then at 6:30, and 7, 7:30, 8, 8:30. At 9 o'clock, I think, they must have decided not to come home. I put it all away. 9:30, I hear the door open, 2 people talking. I walk in the room, and there my husband is with his boss asking where supper is. And she said, I am mad. I am really mad. She said, but I say to myself, I love this man, and I'm going to take the things out of the refrigerator. She's saying, thank goodness for the microwave. And I put out the meal, and we all ate. She said, but then that evening, I walked into the bedroom, and I looked into the bathroom, and I saw the socks hanging on the side of the hamper. And she said, I am upset. And she said, tomorrow after work, I'm going to talk to him about the socks on the side of the hamper. So he comes home the next day, and she says, and when he walks in, she says, honey, we need to talk. Now, with you men in the room, how do you feel when I use that tone of voice? You feel anxiety just hearing the story? That's right. When a woman's voice goes from here down to here, honey, we need to talk.
It's a scary word.
It's a scary, and the words are scary, yes. He was nervous. What? What's happened? He sat down, and she started. Now, when the box is full and you start to talk, very often you say things you don't mean, and you start doing things you don't mean to do, and that's what happened. She said, I started talking. Honey, I've got something that's very difficult. And he's like, you know, on the edge of his seat. What? What? She said, there are socks hanging on the side of the hamper. What socks? Whose socks? What happened? He has no idea. Your socks! They're hanging on the side. Okay, what do you think he says next?
I don't want to say what I think.
He goes, my socks are on the side. He says, I'll move them. I'll put them away. What's the problem? What's the problem? And then he says that thing that no man should say. Honey, you must be having what? It doesn't matter what comes next.
Right.
It's bad. It's very bad.
Right.
It doesn't matter if he says must be having a bad day, must be having PMS, must be having whatever. Whatever it is wrong. It's bad. Okay, now she's really mad. And she says, I can't believe you diminish. Every time I'm upset, you diminish it. I am not having a bad day. I'm not having... Okay, is this going to go anywhere good? No. They're not going to resolve it. Why? Okay. Whether the husband looks like this or like this, he is now standing like this before the socks. There's a whole pile of socks in front of him, and he can't understand why the socks are such a big issue. But do you see what the socks have become? What have the socks become?
Focal point.
At the focal point. They are the metaphor for everything that is wrong. Now, what is really wrong is the question that she can't ask. What is the question that is at the base of this woman's frustrations? Do you, right, do you love me? Because she has decided if you love me, you wouldn't do that. Why would you make life that much harder? Why wouldn't you just put the socks in the hamper? If you loved me, you would come to supper when you said you would come, or you would call if you weren't coming, or there's all these things that go into that. So she's concluded that she's not loved. She's not arguing about the socks. She is deeply hurt over her conclusion that she isn't loved. But she can't say that, because if she says, honey, do you love me? What is he going to say? Of course. And she's going to feel diminished all the more. Because now he didn't diminish just the socks, he just diminished the real thing, the big thing. Okay.
Most men don't understand that.
That's right. That's why I'm sharing this now.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's go back to the woman at the well and see what she's really saying. Okay. She has come with a full box, an incredibly full box. She has tried time after time after time for love. And as we talked already, this law of love is the foundation of everything. So the very foundation of who she is in upheaval. He has said, if you would ask, I would have given you living water. And she says, sir, you have no bucket. In other words, there is no way you can give what you're promising. Not only do you not have a bucket, but the well is deep. You don't know how deep it is. And then she says, are you greater than our ancestor Jacob who gave us this well? In other words, do you have access to some other higher thing? Because she knows it's not there. She knows they're talking in metaphors. So where is this bigger thing? Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But those who drink of the water that I will give will never be thirsty. The water I will give will become in them a spring of water gushing up to eternal life. The Greek words used there are the same that are used for people who are not able to walk, suddenly healed, and jump up and run. Gushing up, a spring of water, gushing up to eternal life. This is something huge, and she knows it. Okay, so we know what she's carrying. We know that she's not coping well because she's there at that time of day. Now, she has not learned to live in this way where emotions come in and go out and she can say what she thinks, but she says to him, and we don't blame her, we can understand, where do you get this living water? Are you greater than Jacob, which we already said, who gave us this well? And he says to her, the spring of living water. Then she says, sir, give me this water so that I may never be thirsty or have to keep coming here to draw water. All of a sudden, she gets literal again because she doesn't know what else to do. Give it to me. And you're talking about being thirsty. Okay, fine, if it means I don't have to come here again. Jesus brings her back to the metaphor. He says, go, call your husband. Now, if ever a person had injured another person, it would appear that it's here. Because her box is tight. It's got the bow on it and the chain on it. And he now just taps, points right there at that spot. Go call your husband. She answers him, I have no husband. Jesus says to her, you're right that you have no husband, for you have in fact 5, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. Now, in most cases we would think that the person would just become angry and say, how dare you? Why would you do that? Here she is in her most vulnerable position. It reminds me of a cat I once had, that when I would leave a room and close the door, my little cat would put his paw underneath the door and do this, underneath the door, because he knew that on the other side of that, I would do this and tap his little paw, and he would move it and I would tap it, and he would move it and I would tap it. Somehow the cat knew that I wasn't going to hurt it, right? Because that's pretty vulnerable to stick your little paw under the door, not really knowing what's on the other side. But the cat somehow trusted and believed that I was there and that I would be gentle. But how did she know? Because somehow she knows, because she doesn't come back angry. She comes back and she says, "Sir, I can see that you're a prophet. I can see that you see things." Now, and then it's almost like she gets nervous. And now we know the Messiah is coming, and when he comes, he's going to proclaim all things. And then Jesus, maybe he shocks her, maybe she kind of knows. He says, "That's who I am. That's who I am. I see you as you are, and I love you still." It is beautiful. And so he has just seen her as he is, and he loves her still. Now his disciples come. They are astonished because of who they see there talking to Jesus and this whole issue of being unclean. And then the text says, then the woman left her water jar and went back to the city. She came thinking that she needed that container, and she leaves it there because she has a different kind of water. She said to the people, "Come and see a man who told me everything I have ever done." Now look at the transition in this woman over the power of a metaphor, a divine metaphor. She comes completely hiding. The box is chained closed, and she leaves. Not only is the box open, she's now telling everybody, "Come, meet a man who told me everything I ever did." Now that is a change. That's a huge shift in a person. And then she says, can he be the Messiah? They left the city, were on their way to him. Many Samaritans from that city believed in him because of the woman's testimony. "He told me everything I've ever done." They said to the woman, "It is no longer because of what you said that we believe. We have heard for ourselves." Now their own box is opening up because of what they hear is happening to hers. Okay, this is one story, but it's very symbolic of many, many stories in Scripture that when Jesus is near, the chains come off. And in fact, that's what he suggested that he was here to do, to loosen those chains, to bring people together, to help them open up their hearts so that they could be seen. Now, the really tricky part about this is, I encourage people when they're sharing their stories with each other not to share too much. Because when you share too much with the people around you, it can never be taken back. And you know, with people you've been around, maybe even your spouses, sometimes when you share things, it can come back to haunt you. Because they will use it in ways that maybe they don't mean to be unkind, but it is unkind. So this is not to say that you should just go out there and share everything about yourself. What it is saying is, if you have a place in life where everything is known and everything is seen in that divine encounter, you will be different. Why? Because of that law of love. When you are seen as you are and loved as you are, then you are different. You have a very safe, secure place. And then you're able to live with a box that's more open, and a box that you can decide when to close it and when to open it. But the most important thing here is that you're aware of what's going on in your own life. Awareness is everything. If things are tucked in the box and tied up with a nice bow and chained all up, then you're not aware of what's going on inside you, and you get caught off guard by your own emotions and your own stuff. I see it a lot in working with couples. Any questions or comments about what you've heard here so far? Yeah,
It
Rob.
reminds me of the CP process,
Ah,
and that's what it means. It breaks you down and allow you to open that box.
okay, yeah.
And, and allow Christ to come in and fill you.
Mm-hmm.
And so while you were doing the didactic, I was just contemplating on the process.
That's actually very interesting. You're saying it reminds you of the CPE process, where you're allowed to share, open up that box in a sense, and share with others. Absolutely. And then we might say, well, how is that a preparation for chaplaincy? But I think it's kind of self-evident that if you're able to open your box, you're able to understand the necessity of other people doing that. Yeah. Any other comments? Or
It seems to me the very first verse of that passage where he says that he had to go through
yes,
Samaria,
yes,
I think that's very powerful.
yeah,
I'm just thinking that maybe he knew she was going to come and he waited for her. So it was not a mistake, but like we learned yesterday, God comes to us where we are.
yeah.
So he knew that she would have gone, to the well. So he patiently waited for her. And maybe she went there many, many times before, pouring out her heart at that well, asking for forgiveness, mercy, I don't know. But Christ knew that she would come, and he waited there for her to encounter her, to spend time with her in privacy, without the disciples. And that's a big thing. Without the disciples, they were not there. So they didn't even know about the encounter until later on, when they probably heard the story or he revealed it to them.
And I'm thinking as you're talking, Gober, that the place of her shame then becomes the place of her salvation.
Exactly.
This place of privacy and hiddenness is the very privacy that provides her the space for salvation. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you said it, yeah. Any other comments? Have you?
I was wondering if you could articulate on how you use given as a metaphor. Could you
Use given. Where are you?
go right up to the top of the other page, the other?
I think you have well, water, drink, gift, given, living as
Go
metaphors.
right all the way up to the.
Are we
first.
on this slide or a
No,
different slide?
different
Oh,
slide.
all right.
Maybe go to the beginning.
So I think it was at the beginning.
Beginning. it
I
says.
don't think I highlight. Did I highlight metaphors at the beginning? Okay,
Yeah.
let's look
Yes,
through that.
You had a number of metaphors. there.
Okay. Let's look.
There, oh, nope, next one.
Come back.
Okay.
Is it there?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, the gift. There it is. There it was right there. All right. If you knew the gift of God, who it was, He would have given you or gifted you living water. So the metaphor is the idea of gift. That it's something that's free, that is freely given. Yeah.
So would it be better if you saying that would have gifted you?
Well, I have to put exactly what the text says. But the metaphor I'm trying to draw, though, is the gift, and it connects with the gift. Given itself is not precisely a metaphor, it's a verb. Yeah, would have given is a, yeah, give. But you're right, yeah, I'm just highlighting the metaphor of gift. Good observation, though.
So talking about the woman and why she came at noon
Mm-hmm.
suggests that she's either an outcast or a prostitute.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming to the well, she comes alone because either she doesn't have friends to come with her, or she doesn't want friends to come with her. And if she doesn't want them to come with her, maybe she's looking for customers. And so here she comes looking for a cheap form of love. And Jesus is offering her love at its best, at its
Right.
deepest,
Right.
the deep well.
Right. Very good. Very well said. Yeah, so she comes looking for love and he offers her love at its deepest. That's a beautiful phrase.
And in some ways, you can think of her bantering back and forth with Jesus as being rather provocative.
Interesting.
But
Hmm?
in her mind,
Sure.
because she doesn't know what that real,
She's pushing him. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah.
because she's not sure what his intentions are.
That's right.
Because she's not used to that.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. And if we can just draw the parallel a little larger, is that in life, that's how we all are. We come in self-protectiveness, we come in hiddenness, we come with desires that are deep that we can't talk about. All of that, she encapsulates all of that. She's not so different than any person. In some way, we all carry a hidden part of ourselves.
Well, if
Yeah.
you think about that as a chaplain, you step out to meet someone, and they may respond to you in their own brokenness.
Yes.
And you can push that away because it's inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
or you can understand where they're at and redirect them,
Yeah.
which is very difficult.
Very.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's not as easy as Jesus did because he's the master. You know what I'm
Mhm,
saying?
mhm.
But to be able to recognize they're speaking out of brokenness, so
Mhm.
I'm not going to be fearful because I know where I am and where, I don't know exactly how to articulate what I'm trying to say.
No, I mean you're saying there's so many things, and we could spend so much time here, but why don't we just finish by saying that there are so many things he did that we should emulate. One is he gave her space to just to just talk with him. He used a metaphor that gave her, metaphors are always safer than facts, always, because then a person can go where they want. When he said, I have living water, that gave her a place to imagine what that might be and how it might help her. So there's a lot of things he did here just by being him that we can do in the clinical setting. So it can be very powerful. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.